Well, hello, I'm David Freeman with Is That Really in the Bible? The question is, why are Paul's letters so misunderstood? In fact, I don't think there is a writer in the New Testament that is more misunderstood than the Apostle Paul. And what I mean by that, the way they misunderstand it, Christians misunderstand it. They look at Paul and they say, well, he taught a no-law theology. He taught the law was a curse. It was done away with. It was nailed to the cross. It's a burden. It's been abolished. It's been fulfilled. We're dead to the law. And if you study Paul, you will have him talking out of both sides of his mouth. And you won't have him, you will be reading him talking out of both sides of his mouth. Well, you know, in one place he will say the law is good and we should keep it. Next place he's saying something totally different. So there's hardly anyone that is more misunderstood than the Apostle Paul. But what I want to do today is to ask the question, why? Is there a motive from God's perspective as to why Paul is so misunderstood? And again, all of this comes from Paul's teaching. Again, the question is why? You know, people don't misunderstand the letter of James. You know, they probably don't even read it and don't want to read it is the reason they don't misunderstand the letter of James. But you take a look at James 2 and verse 20, he will say, but will you know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? And was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seeing then how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect. You see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith alone. Now, does this mean that we are saved by our works? No, of course not. It means, you know, we're saved by the gift of God's grace, but the two work together. What two? Grace and obedience. In fact, you know, if you weren't disobedient, you wouldn't need grace, okay? And what is disobedience? It's the breaking of God's law. 1 John 3:4, sin is the transgression of God's law. Because we break God's law, we need grace. Not only that, not only do we need to be forgiven of our past sins, but we need grace to empower us to live a godly life, which is a real struggle in our lives. It really is. So what I'm saying is your faith better be backed up by obedience to God's law. If it's not, James calls it a dead faith, okay? A dead faith. Now, Martin Luther called James, the apostle, of straw, because Martin Luther thought that James contradicted Paul's teaching. Grace alone, no works involved. Actually, that's not what Paul taught, but that's what Martin Luther thought Paul taught. Grace alone, no works involved. So Martin Luther called James, he totally discredited him and called him the epistle of straw.
Check us out on the web at isthatreallyinthebible.com.